Imagine a world where the name London did not mean power, wealth, or destiny, but merely a distant point at the edge of what was known. While Jesus walked the dusty roads of Judea, preaching, healing, and gathering followers, what we now call London existed far from the center of history. Britannia lay distant from the heart of the Roman Empire, separated by cold seas and wrapped in vague accounts. For many, it was almost the end of the world. Roman maps depicted it as a peripheral island, covered in green and mist, associated more with myths than with political relevance. There were no grand temples or famous cities there. It was a land observed from afar, with cautious curiosity. This sense of isolation shaped everything: the rhythm of life, the absence of imperial ambition, and the feeling that whatever happened there would hardly echo across the known world. Before any city existed, there was only land, shaped by water. The River Thames flowed free, wide, and unpredictable, dictating where people could walk, fish, or cross. No stone bridges, no organized banks. Only irregular paths, flooded areas, and dense forests pressing up to the river's edge. The constant sound of water blended with wind and birdsong, creating a living landscape that was quiet in human terms. Curiously, the Thames was not just an obstacle or a natural resource. It was the axis of survival. It determined meetings, routes, and even local conflicts. Long before any urban plan, it was this river that decided where people gathered. Without knowing it, they were choosing the exact spot where a city would be born centuries later. If someone observed those lands in the first century, they would find communities living in simple cycles, deeply connected to nature. Celtic tribes occupied the region in small settlements, formed by circular houses of wood and thatch. There was no common written language. Stories, beliefs, and laws passed from mouth to mouth. Life revolved around the seasons, rituals, and fire which warmed, gathered, and protected. A rarely remembered detail is that these peoples did not see themselves as backward. For them, the world made sense exactly as it was. Symbols carved into everyday objects carried deep meanings, invisible to outsiders. While empires organized themselves in marble and bureaucracy, here identity was preserved through collective memory and the repetition of daily gestures. Even from afar, Britannia did not escape Rome's attention. Curiosity grew slowly, fueled by reports of natural resources and the island's strategic position. Yet the Roman gaze was ambivalent. The region was described as cold, unstable, and difficult to dominate. Unpredictable weather and rough seas discouraged major campaigns. Still, maps were studied, routes traced, and decisions made far away. A surprising fact is that for decades, Britannia was seen more as a problem than an opportunity. But Rome had a constant drive to expand. When strategic interest prevailed, the idea of crossing the sea ceased to be mere curiosity and became a plan. Everything changed in the year 43 A.D. The Roman invasion transformed both the landscape and the logic of the region. On the banks of the Thames, a small settlement called Londinium emerged. It was not born as a capital or a symbol of power, but as a trading post. Wooden structures, improvised streets, and a simple bridge connected the two sides of the river. Merchants, soldiers, and workers moved through mud and constant noise. Few imagined that this fragile place had a future. A curious detail is that in its early years, Londinium was already more active than politically relevant. It was useful before it was important. There, while the spiritual world was being transformed in the East, a city began to exist almost by chance, quietly laying the foundations of something no one yet knew how to name. Those who walked through Londinium during the lifetime of Jesus encountered a city in formation, defined more by movement than by permanence. Most people had not been born there. Merchants came from other parts of the empire. Soldiers followed temporary orders. Artisans chased opportunity. The streets were dirt-packed and often muddy, and the smells mixed food, animals, smoke, and open sewage. Sound was constant. Voices in different languages, hammering footsteps, simple wooden carts. A little-known detail is that many houses also functioned as workshops or shops, with no clear separation between work and personal life. The city never fully slept during the day, but it offered no comfort. Everything was functional, improvised, alive. Londinium was not a permanent home. It was a place of passage where people were always ready to leave. When the sun set, Londinium completely changed its face. Without public lighting, darkness quickly took over the streets. Only a few torches and oil lamps marked isolated points of light. Most activities ceased at nightfall, not by choice, but by necessity. Night brought real dangers, falls, theft, unwanted encounters. Curiously, the absence of paved roads made the darkness even more oppressive, as every step required caution. Silence was never total, but it was filled with tension. People retreated early, locking simple wooden doors, while mist rose from the river and swallowed the city. For those who lived there, night was not rest. It was waiting. Waiting for dawn, for light, for the safety only daylight could provide. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, another reality was unfolding. While Jesus walked through Galilee, speaking of love, forgiveness, and transformation, Londinium continued with no awareness of these events. There was no fast news, no sense that something extraordinary was happening in the East. Life remained limited to what eyes could see and ears could hear in the streets. A surprising thought is that spiritual decisions shaping centuries were being made while this small settlement had no idea. People worked, argued over prices, built houses, formed families, completely unaware of the larger history taking shape. The world was fragmented and disconnected, and each region lived within its own narrow horizon. Londinium was small, vulnerable, and far from any center of power. Fires, disease, and local conflicts were constant threats. Nothing there suggested future greatness, and yet there was movement, adaptation, and persistence. An ironic detail is that many Roman cities far more important at the time disappeared, while this improvised trading post endured. No one walking those streets could imagine that this place would one day command global routes, finances, and ideas. The city did not know what it would become. It simply existed, responding to the immediate present, unaware of the role it would play in the future. Before empire, before fame, before any idea of greatness, London existed almost invisibly. The Thames flowed quietly at dawn, wrapped in mist, reflecting a sky that carried no promises of power yet. The city awakened slowly, repeating simple gestures, unaware that the world was about to change irreversibly. History was advancing elsewhere, But here everything seemed quiet, suspended in time. And perhaps that is what makes this moment so fascinating. Great transformations do not always begin with awareness or intention. Sometimes they are born in silence, in places no one is watching. Few realize that Londinium was not just a Roman outpost on foreign land, but a space of forced coexistence between cultures. Celts and Romans shared the same territory, but rarely the same way of life. Customs blended slowly and often tensely. While Romans introduced coins, weights, and commercial rules, local peoples preserved ancient traditions, especially in rituals and their relationship with the land. A curious detail is that many Celts adopted Roman objects without abandoning their beliefs, creating a daily life that was hybrid and quietly adaptable. In the market, different languages could be heard, contrasting clothing observed, and it became clear that the city grew not through harmony, but through the need to coexist. Londinium was a living experiment where no one fully controlled the outcome, only the immediate present. Another almost invisible aspect of life in Londinium was its relationship with time. There were no public clocks, no precise schedules. The day was marked by light, tasks, and bodily exhaustion. People woke at dawn and ended their activities when daylight faded. A rarely mentioned fact is that this lack of rigid timekeeping created a different sense of urgency. Time was not something to be measured, but lived. Modern haste did not exist, but physical effort was constant. Every movement required energy. Every task took hours. Life was slower, yet more exhausting. In this rhythm, the city shaped itself organically, without grand plans, simply following the natural flow of days. Finally, there is the silence that records do not capture. Between one construction and another, between one trade and the next, there were moments of pause that rarely enter history. People sitting by the river, watching the water pass. Children playing in the mud. Soldiers thinking of distant lands. A surprising detail is imagining how many ordinary lives pass through there without leaving any trace. Londinium was built by anonymous people whose names would never be remembered, and yet they sustained the beginning of everything. Before London became an idea, a symbol, or a power, it was simply a collection of ordinary lives sharing the same space. And perhaps it is in this anonymity that the city's true origin lies, not in great deeds, but in the quiet sum of common existences moving through time. If this journey through time helped you see London before it became London, follow the channel to keep exploring stories that almost never appear in books. And in the comments, tell us which detail from this invisible past most changed how you imagine the ancient world.